My name is Jordan May Whitaker. I'm 32, and this year, I brought my peach cobbler, a bottle of wine, and the last sliver of hope I had left for feeling like family again. The moment I stepped into that garage-turned-dining room and heard my dad say, "This holiday's for family," I thought maybe, just maybe, I was finally included. But then he looked right at me and asked, "Why are you even here?" The cobbler slid in my hands just a little. I should have turned around then. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment if you've ever walked into a room that told you without a word you didn't belong. Because what happened that night didn't come out of nowhere. Let me show you how 1,000 small rejections can build into one final, devastating moment. I didn't drop the cobbler. But I wanted to. I held it tighter than I should have. Warm ceramic dish wrapped in an old kitchen towel, still faintly smelling of nutmeg and lemon zest. It was the only thing I'd brought, aside from the wine. And the hope. I hadn't meant to bring that part, but it slipped in anyway. Dad didn't even wait for me to put the dish down. "Why are you even here?" he'd said, standing in his usual spot by the old garage fridge, cradling a domestic beer like it was a conversation shield. I blinked. "You invited me," I replied, too quiet for anyone else to hear. He was already laughing with Uncle Jim, the question lost in noise. Or ignored. Probably both. The garage had been converted years ago, after Tyler's second kid was born and family dinners outgrew the actual kitchen. String lights drooped from the exposed beams. Folding tables lined with plastic cloth stretched in a U-shape around the room. The recliner Dad's throne had been dragged in from the living room and sat at the head, framed by a dusty deer head and 3 of Tyler's football photos. I scanned for an empty spot on the folding table, sliding my cobbler dish beside the sweet potato casserole and someone's Jell-O mold. No one looked up. No one asked what I'd brought. Marlene, I mean. Mom finally walked over, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Jordan, you made it," she said, like I was an unexpected guest at a party she didn't plan. She leaned in for a stiff hug that smelled like burnt sugar and store-bought hairspray. "You look tired," she added. "I had to finish 3 client files this morning," I said. "Deadlines don't care about holidays." She gave that half smile she always used when she didn't know what to say. "You still doing that computer job?" "Medical billing." "Right. Well, bless your heart, there's sweet tea on the counter." And just like that, she was gone. I found a chair near the end of the table, across from one of my cousins I hadn't seen in years. He gave me a polite nod before going back to his phone. The chair wobbled under me. My knees touched the metal frame. The hum of conversations swirled around me like fog, not quite touching me, but blurring everything I could have said. "Jordan, hey," someone said. I looked up to see Ashley, Tyler's girlfriend, walking over with a baby on her hip. "I didn't know you'd be here." Her voice was bright. Kind. Startling. "Yeah," I said, standing awkwardly. "Made the cobbler again." "Ooh," she smiled. "Your peach one?" I nodded. "My favorite," she said sincerely. "I'm glad you're here." I could have hugged her for that. But just then, Tyler swooped in behind her, kissed her cheek, and took the baby without looking at me. "Ashley, Dad wants us to move his chair closer to the table." She turned back. "I'll come find you later," she whispered. She meant it. I believed her. The baby giggled as Tyler carried him across the room. Everyone turned to smile. Dad held out his arms. "That's my boy," he bellowed, lifting the kid high like some kind of air. I sat down again, invisible. "Is this seat taken?" someone asked. It was Alicia, of all people. My childhood friend. I hadn't seen her in over a decade. "No, sit," I said, genuinely smiling for the first time since I walked in. She slipped into the chair, setting down a gift bag. "My aunt dragged me to this thing. I'm only here for pie and polite conversation." "I have both," I said, nodding toward the cobbler. We shared a quick laugh, soft and real. For 5 minutes, it felt like I wasn't alone. Then Dad stood, cleared his throat, and clinked his beer bottle with a fork. "Before we say grace," he announced, I just want to say how proud I am of my boy Tyler. Another baby in the family, another little Whitaker in the world, makes a man feel like his name means something. Everyone clapped. I looked down at my lap. No mention of me. Not even a passing word. Not a thank you for the cobbler. Not a welcome home. Just Tyler, Tyler, Tyler. And yet, I stayed seated. I still smiled when Aunt June passed the rolls. Still complimented the green bean casserole. Still acted like I wasn't shrinking in real time. Because that's what you do in this family, you swallow it. Every time. But something in me shifted when I saw my cobbler. Still untouched. Still warm. Still waiting to be seen. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until the room laughed again, not at me but around me. Dad had cracked some joke about the baby drooling all over the Whitaker name, and everyone chuckled like it was comedy gold. I forced a smile. There was a half-second of silence as plates clattered and someone passed the green beans. I reached for the cobbler, hoping to finally serve it, when Aunt Marcy waved her hand in the air. Tyler, what's it like having 2 under 3? I don't know how y'all do it. Ashley laughed. Sleep is a myth. Everyone leaned in. The baby gurgled. My spoon hovered in midair, then lowered again. I tucked my hands under the table. Jordan, Aunt June said suddenly, surprising me. What about you? You still doing that online work? Medical billing, I said, clearing my throat. I finished my certification last year, fully remote now. That's good money, right? Someone added. I couldn't tell who. It's stable, I said. And it lets me work through flare-ups without losing pay. Flare-ups? Dad asked. His voice cut across the room like a belt snap. I hesitated. Anxiety. Some days are harder than others. The silence that followed was deafening. Then a forced laugh, Aunt Marcy again, and the subject changed like someone flipped a switch. Tyler asked if the Titans were still in playoff contention. Conversation shifted like I hadn't said a word. Alicia, still beside me, leaned over and whispered. That took guts. I shrugged. It shouldn't have. You'd think. I reached for my sweet tea. My hand trembled just a little. Mom came over with a tray of deviled eggs and placed it down with her usual tight smile. Jordan, she said too cheerfully. Let's not bring up episodes. You know how your father feels. I blinked. Episodes? She lowered her voice, eyes scanning the room. Anxiety, therapy, that stuff. That stuff, I repeated. This holiday's supposed to be light. You don't want to upset him. I didn't respond. She smoothed her apron like she was ironing the moment flat. We just don't talk like that in this house, she said gently, like it was a rule I should have remembered. Then she was gone. Alicia handed me a napkin. I was gonna offer you a punch to the gut, but I see you already got one. I laughed, but it caught in my throat. I wiped my hands anyway. We used to have a dog, Rusty, when I was a kid. A mutt that always got underfoot. If he jumped on the couch, Dad would snap his fingers, and Rusty would retreat, tail between his legs. I remember thinking how fast he learned the rules. I learned them too. Don't bring your full self to the table. Don't show weakness. Don't make Dad uncomfortable. I stared across the room at Tyler, relaxed, loud, fully himself, and wondered what it would be like to sit in a room like that and not feel like you're intruding on your own family. What's that look? Alicia asked softly. Just remembering. Anything good? I shook my head. The food was being passed around now: ham, mashed potatoes, overcooked green beans the way Dad liked them. Someone knocked over a glass and blamed the baby. More laughter. More noise. I tried again. Did y'all get the cobbler? No one heard. Or maybe they did. It didn't matter. I took a bite of ham and felt nothing. Not hunger, not fullness. Just the act of chewing to stay occupied. Then came the second blow. Ashley turned to Mom. You raised 2 amazing kids. That's not easy. Mom beamed. Oh, Tyler's always been a light. So full of joy. Such a giver. Ashley nodded, then looked at me. And Jordan's got her own strength. I've heard her story, it's inspiring. Myself. Mom's smile faltered. She's always been independent, she said, finally, adjusting a spoon on the table. Didn't like help, kept to herself. That wasn't true. I used to beg for attention, cling to her apron, sneak her notes, leave sticky notes that said, Jordan was here. I wanted her eyes, her praise, her anything. But I learned what she preferred: neatness, predictability, silence. So I gave her that. Ashley blinked. Well, I think she's amazing. All. I met her eyes and nodded, grateful. Alicia murmured. It's weird how your absence made them more comfortable than your presence does. That line landed hard. I looked down at my plate, my fork poised above the cranberry sauce, and whispered. Yeah, I noticed that too. Dad clinked his glass again. Grace time. Everyone bowed their heads. Hands linked across the table. I found myself between Alicia and Aunt June. Alicia squeezed once light, but firm. Lord, Dad began. We thank you for this food, for this family, for Tyler and Ashley and their babies. For continuing the Whitaker name. For all the blessings you've given us. He paused. And we thank you for those who know how to show up and be part of something bigger than themselves. I didn't lift my head. I just stared at the gravy stain on the tablecloth and waited for the prayer to end. When it did, I didn't say amen. After the prayer, everyone exhaled like silence had been holding their ribs hostage. Plates clattered. Conversations spun back up like nothing had happened. Except it had. I could still hear Dad's words echoing. For those who know how to show up and be part of something bigger. And I was still wondering who that was aimed at. I stood to help clear dishes, mostly to give my hands something to do. Alicia caught my eye and mouthed, You okay? I gave a half nod. Not really, but close enough. The folding table was crowded, elbow to elbow, paper napkins already crumpled and tossed into plates half smeared with gravy. I started stacking them, careful not to scrape too loudly. Years of practice. Dad was already kicking back in the recliner that had somehow made its way into the garage. The law, Z-boy. The throne. Same cracked leather, same busted right armrest, same spot under the deer head where he could see everyone and everything. Tyler sat on the floor beside him, laughing like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. That chair's been in the family 25 years, Dad said proudly, cracking open another Budweiser. Held me through 2 surgeries, 3 bosses, and 4 grandkids. Ashley smiled. It's definitely got character. You bet it does. He reached down and patted the arm. This old thing's practically a family member. He paused, then looked at Tyler. You know what? When I go, this chair's yours. Tyler laughed, but Dad wasn't joking. Seriously, he said. Man's throne belongs to his legacy. The room chuckled like it was charming. I kept scraping plates into the trash. No one asked who vacuumed the garage carpet last year. Who mailed the birthday cards from out of state? Who paid for the emergency plumber when the pipes burst in February and the checkbook was missing? I handed the first stack of plates to Ashley. She smiled again. You don't have to do all this. I know. Or, I just didn't want to sit. I walked into the kitchen to rinse the dishes. Mom was already there, hands in soapy water. Did you get any ham? She asked, without looking at me. Not hungry. You should eat. You always skip meals when you're stressed. Remember? I didn't answer. I grabbed a towel and started drying. You didn't need to clean up, she said. I know. You always were so independent, she added, like it was both a compliment and a flaw. I dried in silence. My hands moved on autopilot. We worked side by side, quiet, like we had when I was 15 and stayed home from school with strep. She never liked silence, always filled it with radio, or humming, or church gossip. But that afternoon, we just washed dishes without speaking. And somehow, that was the most connected I'd ever felt to her. I wondered if she remembered. Probably not. When I walked back out with a fresh dish of rolls, Dad was holding court again. Back in my day, football wasn't about politics and paychecks. It was grit. Heart. You remember, Ty? Sure do, Tyler said, grinning. Ashley was bouncing the baby on her lap, laughing at the right spots. I sat on a folding chair near the corner, close enough to hear, far enough not to be seen. Jordan, someone called. I looked up. It was Alicia, holding a slice of pie on a paper plate. You okay with cherry? I grabbed you one. Thanks, I said, surprised. I hadn't even realized dessert was out. She sat beside me again. That recliner feels like it should come with a deed. I laughed. Pretty sure Dad considers it part of the inheritance. Alicia leaned in, voice low. You know, it's wild how everyone keeps talking about legacy, but no one seems to realize who's been holding the place together from behind the scenes. I looked down at the pie. You mean the plumber call? I asked lightly. I mean everything. I'll come. She nudged the plate toward me. You don't have to laugh it off, Jordan. I blinked. My throat tightened. No one had ever said that to me before. I took a bite. It tasted like store-bought crust and canned filling, but it was the first thing that had flavor all day. Alicia stood. I'm gonna make coffee. You want in? Yeah, I said, almost too fast. Please. As she walked away, I glanced at the recliner again. Tyler was now seated in it, Dad standing behind him, a hand on his shoulder. It looked like a scene from a painting. The favored son. The passing of the torch. And all I could think about was that I'd vacuumed the cushion last Thanksgiving. That I'd been the one to fix the leg brace with super glue when it cracked 2 years ago. I wondered if they'd remember that. I already knew the answer. After dessert, the room thinned out. Ashley took the baby to the spare room for a nap. The uncles hovered around the folding card table, playing spades with a Bluetooth speaker humming classic rock in the corner. A few cousins were already slipping out the side door, murmuring thank yous and promises to do this again next year. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the last of the sweet tea swirling in its plastic pitcher. I could have left. Could have taken the cobbler and made up some excuse. A headache. A client call. But instead, I grabbed the garbage bag and went out to the garage. That was where the real legacy lived. The trophies were still their high school football plaques, varsity letters, Tyler's all-county medal in a cracked shadow box. Lined up neatly on a shelf made from an old barn door, lit by a clamp light Dad had rigged himself. The same shelf where my spelling bee ribbons used to be. I scanned the space again. Gone. Debate team plaque? Gone. State writing award? Also gone. For a second, I thought maybe they'd been moved. Maybe Mom boxed them up during spring cleaning. But then I saw it in the far corner, behind a stack of extension cords and a busted shop vac, a clear storage tub with a cracked lid. I crouched down and opened it slowly. There it was, my graduation program, still folded like it had never been opened. A faded copy of the newspaper from the week I gave my valedictorian speech. My name in bold. Jordan Whittaker. A voice for the quiet ones. I ran my fingers over the newsprint. The photo was grainy, but I remembered the dress I wore. Pale blue. Borrowed from a neighbor. I remembered how Dad had stood in the back of the auditorium and left right after the last name was called. Said he had to beat traffic. I'd walked off the stage into silence. Jordan? I looked up. Mom stood near the doorway, her arms crossed over her cardigan. What are you doing in here? She asked, soft but sharp. I held up the paper. Just remembering. She stepped closer, glancing down at the tub like it had bitten her. Oh, that old thing. I thought we tossed those. You tossed my graduation? No, she said quickly. I meant the box. I just figured you wouldn't care about high school stuff anymore. I don't, I said. Except Tyler's stuff is still up. She blinked. Well, his was easier to frame. You know, medals and all that. Although, I didn't answer. I folded the paper again, carefully this time. You always said you didn't want the spotlight, she added. Said it made you nervous. I was 12. Well, she said, smiling tightly. You always seemed strong enough to go without it. That word again. Strong. It was how they excused the forgetting. She walked over to the utility sink and started rinsing something without asking if I was done talking. I stood. The tub felt heavier now. I wanted to ask her why she kept the baby's ultrasound photo taped to the fridge but boxed up my scholarship letter. Why my name was a whisper in this house and Tyler's was a parade. But instead, I said, the cobbler didn't get touched. She didn't turn around. That's okay. Everyone filled up on ham. Right. I left the tub half open. Let her see it every time she did laundry. Let it live in the corner like I did still here, but out of view. As I walked back toward the table, I passed Dad and Tyler laughing about something an old coach, a bad play, a touchdown that got called back. Tyler's hand rested on the arm of the recliner like it was always his. I sat down next to Alicia, who passed me a cup of coffee without a word. I didn't see your name on any of that stuff, she said quietly. I shrugged. Mom said it wasn't frame-worthy. She didn't laugh. I don't know how you keep coming back here, she said, and still bring dessert. I didn't either, but I looked down at my lap and realized I was still holding the folded newspaper. The headline visible, like it was waiting for me to remember myself. Dinner had mostly settled into leftovers and gossip by the time Dad stood up again. He clinked his fork against his glass with a slow rhythm loud enough to hush the room, but not so loud that it seemed like a performance. He always did this when he wanted everyone to listen without thinking he wanted the spotlight. I just want to say a few words, he said, steadying himself behind his recliner. Before we call it a night. Chairs creaked. Someone cleared their throat. I set down my coffee. We've had a good year, Dad started, nodding at Tyler. A real good one. Another grandbaby. A strong family name carried forward. Hard work paying off. He gestured toward the table. We're blessed to be together. Some folks don't have that. I waited. I knew how these speeches went. He'd go around the room. Say a line or two about everyone. Toast to the future, that sort of thing. He pointed toward Aunt June. June, you handled that gallbladder surgery like a champ. Then to Uncle Jim. Still kickin' at 60, too not bad for a guy who flunked gym class. Laughter. To Ashley, he said, lifting his glass, for being the kind of mother every man hopes his son ends up with. She blushed, and Tyler pulled her in a little tighter. To Tyler, for being the kind of man I can be proud of. I waited. He kept going. To Marlene, for keeping this circus running. Nothing. Not even a glance my way. He blinked. That was it. The blessing was done. And I was invisible again. Like I didn't sit at that table. Like I hadn't made the cobbler, vacuumed the garage last fall, covered the plumbing bill last year when their hot water heater exploded. A lump rose in my throat. Not rage. Not yet. Just that quiet, familiar sting of being erased on purpose. I looked down at my plate. My fork, my hands. Still waiting to be seen. Then my voice came before I had time to think it through. Then why did you ask me to bring dessert? The silence was sharp. Real sharp. Dad blinked, confused. What was that? He asked, though I knew he'd heard me. I looked up, straight at him. You said this holiday's for family, I said, quieter now. But you left me out. The whole table went still. Even the baby stopped babbling. Mom shifted in her chair. Jordan, now's not the time. No, it's okay. Dad said quickly, holding up a hand like he was the peacemaker. Let her speak. That surprised me. It also terrified me. But I didn't flinch. I drove 3 hours. I took off work. I made your favorite cobbler. And you thanked everyone but me. His jaw tensed. Well, you didn't bring any kids or news, so I figured there wasn't much to say. There it was. The words he'd probably meant for years. A soft gasp from across the table. Maybe from Ashley. Maybe Alicia. I couldn't tell. I sat back. The heat in my chest didn't burn. It hummed. Low. Controlled. Alive. Got it, I said. Mom jumped in. Honey, you're always welcome. Don't twist this into something it's not. It's not twisted, I said, reaching for my coffee again. It's just clear now. Alicia's hand brushed mine beneath the table. Just once. Like she was anchoring me. I needed that. Dad grabbed his beer. You always were the dramatic one. I smiled, but it wasn't warm. Funny, I said. You used to call me the quiet one. Jordan, Mom warned. It's fine, I said. Really? I looked around the table. Nobody met my eyes. Not even Tyler. Especially not Tyler. My gaze fell on the cobbler dish. Still full. Still wrapped in the towel I'd driven it in with. Still warm. I reached over and pulled it toward me. Aunt Marcy spoke up too brightly. You know, we really should cut that open. Everyone loves Jordan's cobbler. Too late. Don't worry about it, I said. It's not for everyone. Another silence. Then the clatter of a fork dropped on a plate. Ashley stood up slowly, cradling the baby. I'm gonna check on the little one, she said. But her voice was shaking. As she passed me, she whispered. That wasn't okay. I'm sorry. It landed like water on scorched earth. Not enough. But something. I stood too. Gently picked up the cobbler dish, wrapping it back in the towel. Mom looked like she might say something, an apology, a protest, a guilt trip. But she didn't. She just smoothed her napkin in her lap. Dad sat back down, recliner creaking under his weight. The room moved on like nothing had happened. But something had. I was done waiting for a blessing that was never coming. I didn't plan to say another word. I thought I could just write it out, let the awkwardness settle like dust and drift through the rest of the night invisible, the way they preferred me. But silence is heavy when it lands too late. And some wounds hum louder than others. I was refolding the towel around the cobbler dish when Tyler walked over, bouncing his baby in one arm and sipping sweet tea with the other like it was any other Thursday night. You good? He asked casually, like he hadn't just watched our dad erase me from the room. I gave him a tight smile. I'm fine. You know how Dad is, he said, like that excused everything. He's old school, doesn't mean nothing by it. Doesn't mean nothing, I repeated, quieter. He grinned, missing the tone completely. Honestly, it's kinda impressive you still show up. I think I would have bailed a long time ago. That made me pause. Not because he was wrong, but because he didn't even hear himself. You get to bail, I said. I never did. He blinked. What do you mean? I looked down at the dish in my hands. Still warm, still untouched. I'm the one who paid their past due electric bill last winter, I said. The one who sends birthday cards for them because Mom forgets. I called the social worker when Dad wouldn't go to his follow-up appointment after the fall. Tyler shifted his weight. I didn't know about that. Well, exactly. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Behind him, Dad let out a loud laugh at something on the television. I lowered my voice. And yet I'm the disappointment. Tyler ran his hand through his hair. Come on, Joe. You're not. Don't, I said. Not now. Ashley appeared beside him with the diaper bag, sensing the shift. Her eyes flicked between us, brows furrowed. We're heading out, she said softly. Drive safe, okay? He nodded. Thanks. Oh. As they turned to leave, I heard Dad's voice rise again. Guess the Whitaker name survives another generation. I froze. Something inside me cracked. Not a big break. Not a shout or a thrown plate. Just a split. Quiet. Final. I stepped back into the center of the room. No one noticed at first. Then Alicia saw me. Then Mom. Then the whole room stilled. I'm heading out, I said calmly. Mom stood. Wait, we haven't done photos. Okay. I'm good, I said, adjusting the towel around the dish. You don't have to leave, she added quickly. We're just. Just what? I asked, voice steady. Trying to keep things peaceful. Peaceful, I repeated, and laughed once soft, like disbelief. Dad looked over finally. Nobody told you to leave, Jordan. No, I said. But nobody told me I mattered either. A hush fell. I took a breath. Then another. I brought dessert. I brought help. I brought myself. And none of it was good enough to even mention. Now hang on, Dad started. But I didn't let him finish. I've been pretending this place was home for years, hoping it might eventually feel like it. I looked right at him. But it doesn't. Mom's lips parted. She looked like she wanted to say something soft, something to make it better. But she didn't. She just lowered herself back into her seat. Jordan. Dad said again, tone shifting, not apologetic, just firmer. You're being dramatic. There it was. The word he always reached for when he ran out of defenses. I'm being honest, I said. That's the part you don't like. I stepped toward the door. No one stopped me. Not even Tyler. I reached for the handle and looked back once. The whole room stared at me like I'd just broken a vase they didn't want anyway. Only Alicia stood. I'll walk you out, she said gently. We stepped into the cold Tennessee air. It bit hard, not enough to hurt, but enough to remind you you're alive. My breath fogged in front of me. Alicia didn't say anything right away. When we got to my car, I turned to her. You think I overreacted? She shook her head. I think you reacted. Finally. I opened the passenger door and placed the cobbler inside, careful not to tip it. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it. But I knew I wasn't leaving it behind. I'm proud of you, Alicia said quietly. That couldn't have been easy. Ender. It wasn't, I said, but it was necessary. She hugged me. No big production. Just warmth. And release. I got in the car and started the engine. As the headlights lit the driveway, I glanced once more at the house. No one came out. No one waved. I backed out slowly. For the first time in years, I didn't wonder if they'd notice I was gone. I knew they would. But not for the reasons I used to hope for. I didn't drive home right away. I just drove. No map. No music. Just the hum of tires on old pavement and the soft rattle of the cobbler dish on the seat beside me, still warm through the towel. It felt like I had to get away from the house before I could actually feel anything. Like the walls of that garage had been holding my breath hostage. Now that I was out, the air hit hard. Cold, honest, free. I passed the Dollar General where I used to buy birthday cards I'd never get a thank you for. The middle school parking lot where Dad forgot to pick me up after the band concert. I sat on the curb that night until the janitor gave me a ride home. I never told anyone. They wouldn't have listened. My hands tightened on the wheel. The cobbler shifted on the passenger seat, the towel sliding half off. I reached out at the next stop sign to readjust it, then left my hand there. Just resting. Just grounding. A wave of something came over me, not sadness, not quite, not anger either, just hollow. The kind of hollow that echoes. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was Alicia. I almost didn't answer. I didn't want to talk. Didn't want to explain or reassure someone that I was fine when I wasn't. But I answered anyway. Hey, I said softly. Are you driving? Yeah. Anywhere? Number. She paused. Wanna come here? I exhaled. Where's here? My aunt's place. She's asleep already. You can crash on the couch or talk or not talk, whatever you want. I didn't answer right away. Part of me felt like I should just go home. Wash the dish. Pretend it never happened. Pick up the pieces and keep moving. That part of me always wanted to keep moving. But another part, the one that felt 12 years old again and left on a curb, wanted to sit in a room where no one expected me to explain myself. So I said, yeah, text me the address. She did. I turned left at the old laundromat, past the Sonic with the broken sign. I knew this town too well. Every building held a version of me I didn't want to run into. A younger me. A quieter one. A version that thought if she just worked hard enough, brought enough to the table, she'd finally get a seat. I stopped at a red light across from the hardware store where Dad used to buy tools he'd never fix anything with. He liked the feeling of being needed more than the work of actually helping. It hit me harder than I expected. That I was never going to get the version of him I needed. That he didn't withhold love because he was broken. He just didn't have it for me. Not the way I needed it. I let that truth sit. It burned a little. But it also cleared the fog. When I pulled into Alicia's driveway, the porch light was on. She stepped out in an oversized sweatshirt and leggings, holding 2 mugs of something warm. "You don't have to say anything," she said, offering one. "But you're not sitting in a cold car by yourself either." I took the mug. Apple cider. Steam curled up like breath. We sat on the porch swing, not talking for a while. The wood creaked beneath us. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A train passed. I looked down at the cobbler dish between my feet. "I don't even like peaches," I said. Alicia laughed gently. "Why'd you make it then?" "It's Dad's favorite." She nodded like she already knew the rest. I didn't need to say it. I used to think if I could just get it right, if the crust was perfect, if it was warm enough, sweet enough, maybe they'd see me. I paused. But they never ate it. Not once. Alicia looked at me, soft but steady. "You brought something homemade to a table that never fed you." That line landed so deep I couldn't speak for a second. Then I whispered, "Yeah." She didn't hug me. She just sat beside me, sharing the air, sharing the stillness. And for once, that was enough. The next morning, I woke up on Alicia's couch to the smell of coffee and the weight of my phone buzzing near my hip. 7 missed calls. 3 from Mom. 2 from Tyler. 1 from Dad. And 1 from a number I didn't recognize, probably Aunt June, or someone trying to check in. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I didn't have the stomach for the tone. Alicia was in the kitchen, humming softly, pouring coffee into a mug that said, "Messy bun and getting stuff done." She slid it toward me. "Morning." "Barely," I said, checking the time. "Almost 10. She nodded toward the phone. "You gonna call them back?" I shook my head. "No rush," she said, and disappeared into the guest room to give me space. I sipped the coffee slowly, letting the warmth move through me like proof that I was still here. Still choosing myself. When the caffeine hit, I opened my budgeting app. Not because I wanted to stress about money, but because I needed to see things clearly. I scrolled to recurring expenses and made a new list. $20 a month to Mom's medication, copay. $150 loan to Tyler from July, never repaid. $80 for Christmas gifts I mailed myself because they forgot again this year. $240, plumber bill from February. $9.99 for a shared streaming service I hadn't used since Easter. It added up fast. Not just the money, but the weight of it. The quiet way I'd been paying for my place in a family that still forgot to set a plate for me. I opened a new tab and logged into my email. Typed out a message I'd been afraid to write for 2 years. Subject: Financial boundary. Going forward. Hey Mom and Dad. Just a quick note to say I'll no longer be covering or contributing to shared family expenses moving forward, including prescriptions, utilities, or last-minute emergencies. I've taken on more than I should have, and I'm stepping back for my own health. Thanks for understanding. Jordan. I hovered over send for a long time. That old voice kicked in, the one that whispered, "Don't start drama." The one that warned, "They'll twist this." But a louder voice, newer, sharper, said, "They already did." So I clicked send. A rush of adrenaline hit, like a cold plunge. Then, calm. I opened the family group thread next, muted it. Scrolled back through old messages. Photos of Tyler's kids. Prayer requests. Dad's rants about real men and the government. Mom's polite correction. Not a single birthday wish for me this year. Just one forwarded meme from Aunt Marcy that read, "Strong women don't need applause." I hit leave group. The app warned, "Are you sure you want to exit this conversation?" Yes. Yes, I was. I set the phone face down on the table. Across the room, Alicia reappeared with a folded blanket and her laptop. "You okay?" she asked gently. I nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." She smiled. "What now?" "Work," I said, "routine. Sanity." She nodded. "You want the Wi-Fi password?" I laughed. I've never wanted one more. She scribbled it on a post-it and slid it across the table. As I reached for it, my phone lit up again. Another voicemail. From Dad. No text. Just a call. I stared at it for a while. Then hit play. His voice was quieter than usual. Jordan. I don't know what all that was about. But family doesn't quit on family. You left, and it embarrassed your mother. I hope you're proud of yourself. Oh. Then a pause. He sighed. Guess you're not the little girl who used to ask for rides to school anymore. Another beat. Click. No apology. Just control dressed as concern. I deleted it. No second listens. No more room for guilt pretending to be love. I poured the rest of my coffee and opened my laptop. On the screen, a client file blinked. Deadline tomorrow. Medical claim submission. Coded for anxiety treatment and follow-up. I clicked Start and smiled to myself. It showed up 3 days later. A small white envelope with my name written in all caps, blocky, uneven, like he never figured out how to write like an adult. No return address. Just a Knoxville postmark and a stamp of a sunflower. Inside was a postcard. On the front, a photo of a fishing dock at Norris Lake. On the back, just a few lines in his familiar, crooked handwriting. Didn't know it hurt that bad. I saw it. I'm sorry. T. That was it. No, love you. No apology for standing by while Dad gutted me in front of everyone. Just those 4 sentences. I stared at it for a long time. Folded it. Unfolded it. Read it again. It didn't feel like a lifeline. Not exactly. But it also didn't feel like manipulation. That was what confused me the most. I set it on the counter and walked away. Came back. Stared at it again. The sunlight from the kitchen window hit it in a way that made the card seem older than it was, like it had always existed, just waiting to be read. Alicia came in with her laptop and a bowl of cereal, saw me staring, and sat without asking. From Tyler? I nodded. Postcard. What'd he say? Not much. Just that he saw it, said sorry. She chewed slowly. Do you believe him? I don't know. I looked out the window. My reflection hovered in the glass, solid but blurred. When we were little, I said. We used to build Lego cities together. He always wanted to be mayor. I was the architect. I liked making the bridges. Alicia smiled. That tracks. Every time I tried to make something with arches or windows, he'd knock it down and say it wasn't strong enough. That it wouldn't survive the flood. The flood? He made up disasters. Tornadoes, tsunamis, always some big storm coming. She raised an eyebrow. Sounds familiar. I laughed a little. Yeah. Dad's voice through a kid's imagination. I paused, thinking. Thing is, I don't think Tyler even knew he was doing it. He just absorbed it. Learned early on that the best way to stay safe was to stand next to power. And stay out of its way, Alicia added. Exactly. I glanced back at the postcard. The ink had bled a little, like maybe his hand shook when he wrote it. Or maybe the pen was cheap, maybe both. Part of me wanted to tear it up. Say it was too late. Another part wanted to believe it meant something. That maybe someone had seen me in that room. And cared. Even if they didn't know what to do about it. I picked up the card and turned it over again. I saw it. Those words felt heavier than the rest. He didn't say, I saw you. He said, it. Like the scene. The eruption. The wound. But also maybe the years of build-up. The unspoken architecture of our family. I walked to my bag and slid the card into the front pocket, not hidden, but not on display either. Alicia watched me carefully. You gonna reply? I shrugged. I don't know what I'd say. Sometimes nothing is safer, she said. Sometimes, I agreed. But maybe not this time. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't rush to write anything down. I just let the silence settle. Because sometimes the gap between what we want and what we're ready for needs to breathe. I found it by accident. tucked in an old email draft labeled, Thanksgiving. The subject line was blank, the body had no salutation. Just words. I must have written it after last year's holiday. Or maybe the one before that. They all blurred now. It wasn't long, just 2 paragraphs, but every line carried weight. I brought the rolls and cranberry sauce, like you asked. No one ate the cranberry sauce, but I didn't say anything. I just packed it up and took it home like it never happened. I'm trying. I really am. I laugh at the jokes that hurt. I set the table. I ask about Tyler's job even though no one asks about mine. I sit through prayers that don't include me. I bring the cobbler you like, hoping you'll remember that I exist. That was it. No, love you. No sign-off. Just a draft left to rot in the cloud like most of the things I never said out loud. I stared at the blinking cursor below the final line. Part of me wanted to delete it. Burn the whole thing from memory. Pretend I was past it. But another part wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet. I copied the message into a blank Word document. Printed it, held the page in my hands like proof. The paper crackled faintly as I folded it in half. Alicia walked into the kitchen as I slid it into my journal. Old work file? She asked, seeing the printer light still on. Something like that, I said. She poured a second cup of coffee and handed me one without a word. We sat at the table in silence. There was something sacred about the way she didn't ask. No pressure. No timeline. Just presence. After she went back to her laptop, I opened a fresh page in my journal. Not to rewrite the letter. To write a new one. One that wasn't meant for them. One meant for me. Dear Jordan, you did everything you were told would earn love. You helped, you paid, you waited. You carried silence like a badge and wore strength like armor. You thought being good would make you visible. But they were never looking. It's not your fault. And it never was. You don't owe them softness in exchange for being tolerated. You don't have to build a bridge from your own spine. You don't have to keep offering peace to people who mistake your silence for comfort. You get to walk away. You get to rest. You get to take up space even if no one claps when you do. Love. Me. I didn't cry reading it back. I thought I might. But the tears had already done their time in past chapters. Now I just felt light. Like the space grief had taken up was finally being cleared out for something softer. Not joy, not yet. But something close. Like calm. I folded that page, too, and tucked it into the same journal pocket as the first one. Old self. New self. Side by side. I didn't need to send either. They'd done their job already. Around lunchtime, Alicia popped her head in and asked if I wanted to walk into town. There was a craft fair downtown, cider, live music, booths with earrings made from spoons and resin bookmarks that glowed. I hesitated for a second. Then nodded. Yeah, I said. That sounds good. As I reached for my keys, I paused. Then went back to my journal, opened it one more time, and slid the 2 letters into the back pocket like a spine-holding memory. Not for proof. Not for confrontation. Just for safekeeping. It was a Tuesday. Gray, rainy, cold in that Tennessee way that seeps into your bones not because of the temperature, but because of what it reminds you of. The kind of cold that makes you think of folding chairs under tents and somebody reading psalms in a voice too flat to mean it. I'd just gotten back from the grocery store, one reusable bag slung over my arm, half a jug of oat milk in the other when my phone buzzed. Voicemail from Tyler. That alone made me stop. He rarely left voicemails. Texts, maybe. GIFs, definitely. But not voice. I stood in the doorway for a minute before pressing play. Hey, it's me. Just wanted to let you know Mr. Halford passed. You remember him, Dad's fishing buddy from church. They had the funeral yesterday, pretty quiet. He paused. Anyway, Mom said you might not have heard. Thought you'd want to know. Another pause. And I think they were hoping you'd reach out, or just check in. Click. I set the bag on the counter. The oat milk was already sweating through the cardboard. Mr. Halford. I hadn't thought about him in years. He was the one who fixed our mailbox after Tyler hit it with his bike. The one who always brought root beer barrels to Sunday school and called me Miss J. He once told me I'd grow up to either run the world or walk away from it. At the time, I didn't know which sounded scarier. I walked into the living room and sat on the couch. The voicemail replayed in my head. They were hoping you'd reach out. I stared at my keys on the coffee table. For a second, just a second, I imagined it. Getting in the car. Driving the familiar backroads. Pulling up to the house where the porch light would already be on. Maybe Mom would hug me. Maybe Dad would nod in that stiff, performative way that said, "You're doing what's expected, good." Maybe we'd all pretend things hadn't cracked open on that last holiday. That they hadn't forgotten me. That I hadn't left. That I just drifted and was now drifting back. I imagined all of it. And then I pictured something else. Walking through that front door and disappearing into that old version of myself, the quiet one, the compliant one, the Jordan who brought dessert and swallowed the sting. That image chilled me more than the weather. Because for the first time, I knew I couldn't be her again. Not even to make peace. Not even for death. I stood up. Poured the oat milk into a mug. Heated it slowly on the stove. Watched it steam. Alicia walked in from the porch with a book under her arm and wet hair from the mist. "You okay?" she asked, setting the book down. "Mr. Halford passed," I said. "Funeral was yesterday." She nodded, waiting. Tyler called, said they were hoping I'd check in. Her brow tightened, but she didn't say anything. I thought about it, I admitted. She still didn't speak. Then I added, "But I'm not going." A breath I didn't realize I'd been holding slipped out. Alicia simply nodded. "Okay." And just like that, no praise, no guilt, no performance, it was done. I poured the oat milk into 2 mugs and handed her one. We sat down on the couch, legs tucked up under throw blankets, the heater humming softly. "After a while," I said. "A year ago, I would have driven over without thinking. I would have baked something, brought a card. Saturday quietly, smiled politely. All in." Alicia sipped her drink. "And now?" I looked at the window, at the soft smear of rain on the glass. "And now, I'm choosing not to disappear." She leaned her head on my shoulder. We didn't need to fill the silence. Because some choices don't need a witness. Only a mirror. It had been there for weeks. Wrapped in foil, double-bagged in plastic, sitting on the middle shelf behind a bag of frozen peas and a half-used container of Cool Whip. I wasn't avoiding it exactly. I just forgot it was there. Until one night, cleaning out the freezer, I pulled it out and saw the faint marker scribble on the top of the foil. "Peach cobbler, from Dad's." I stared at it for a long time. It was the same cobbler I'd brought to the holiday. The one no one touched. The one I carried out like proof that I still tried. I set it on the counter. It felt heavier than it should have, like it was carrying more than fruit and crust. Like it still held pieces of everything I'd once believed about love. I thought about throwing it away. It would have been easy. Trash bin. Lid closed. Gone. But I didn't move. I just stood there, palms on the counter, watching the condensation begin to form along the edges of the foil. There was a time not so long ago when that cobbler represented all I had left to offer. When it was more than a dessert. It was a performance. An offering. A hope. And every time it went untouched, it didn't just feel like rejection of a dish. It felt like rejection of me. But now, staring at it under the soft kitchen light, I realized something. It wasn't mine anymore. Not in that way. Not in the way that tied my worth to whether someone else thought it was sweet enough, warm enough, good enough. This time, it was just cobbler. I peeled back the foil. The crust had held up. Still golden. A little freezer burned at the edge, but it looked fine. Alicia walked in, hair damp from the shower, hoodie sleeves pushed up to her elbows. "You okay?" she asked, eyeing the pan. "Yeah," I said. "Just deciding what to do with this." She tilted her head. "That the cobbler?" "The one and only." She didn't offer a suggestion. She just waited. After a few seconds, I grabbed 2 spoons from the drawer. She raised an eyebrow. I don't even like peaches, I said. Neither do I, she smiled. We sat on the couch, legs curled under us, cobbler pan between us on a towel. We ate it slowly, quietly, and something about that felt like closure. It didn't need to be symbolic. It didn't need to mean anything dramatic. It was just a moment. One where the thing that used to represent everything I was denied. After a few bites, I set my spoon down. It's not that bad, I said. Alicia grinned. That's high praise coming from you. I laughed. And it wasn't bitter. It wasn't strained. It was real. Later that night, I wrote down a list in my journal, not a resolution, not a 5-year plan. Just a list of things I wanted more of. It was simple. Quiet mornings. Honest friendships. Food I like. Laughter that doesn't come with a cost. Holidays that feel like home even if I have to build them from scratch. At the bottom of the list, I wrote, room to matter. Not to prove anything. Not to earn anything. Just to exist and be seen. And as I closed the journal, I realized I'd already started. Not because they'd changed, but because I had.